Kia ora tātou, welcome back to the Wargaming Den. Today I've got the second battle in my Kokoda track campaign. This game is based around a clash that occurred near the village of Oivi, not long after the first game took place. Let's have a look at the background. One of the interesting things about the Kokoda campaign is often distances were measured in hours rather than in kilometres or miles, basically how long it took to walk between A and B. The village of Oivi is down the track from Kokoda. The troops that had ambushed the Japanese in the last battle retreated back to Oivi, and there they were met with reinforcements from 12 platoon, and they dug in and were planning to delay the Japanese a bit more. They were joined here by Captain Sam Templeton, bit of a legend on the Kokoda campaign, but unfortunately this was to be his last battle. He was actually killed towards the end of this engagement, unfortunately, but we're just going to see what happens in my particular version of events. Again, I'm just using a 3x4 table. I might actually look at building myself a 4x4 table for these smaller infantry based games. Japanese can start along this base edge about 6 inches on. The Australians are deployed about 12 to 15 inches on round the village of Oivi up here. Can't really see it very well here, but there is actually a hill or plateau, and that's where the village was located. As with the last game, all the tabletop is pretty much counting as difficult going and concealing terrain, so there's no moving at the double, but they are probably the main little rules I've come up with. Okay, haven't really thought too much about objectives except that the Japanese have to capture one of those two buildings on top of the plateau there, representing the village. Lost squads are not available in the next battle, and the Australians must hold for at least 6 turns before retreating off the table. It is a delaying type engagement. Okay, defending this time will be 2 platoons, 11 and 12, from B Company of the 39th Militia Battalion. All troops are regulars. And the Japanese have 2 platoons from the 1st Company of the 1st Battalion of the 144th Regiment. Basically all the Japanese got painted up so far. Their platoons have an HQ, 3 rifle squads and a grenadier squad with knee mortars. They've also got 2 Juki medium machine guns in support as well, and the Japanese count as veterans. Okay, and just a quick shot of the Australian positions. I actually forgot that they were 1 squad down, so actually a section down. They actually had another section here, but this is 11 platoon here with their 2 sections and their HQ. Then over on this flank we've got 12 platoon with 2 sections forward, 1 in reserve. That's the company HQ stand. And this is actually during one of the turns, and the Japanese are just advancing over there, but pretend that they're not there. Okay, and here we have a shot of the deployment. You can see the Australians up on the plateau. That's the section that has since been removed, and the Japanese have just got their company commands here and here in their their platoon commands and their company command there. Right, the battle for Oivi, turn 1. All the Australian sections have just gone to ground. They're all dug in, and the Japanese are advancing from the other side of the valley up towards the plateau where the village lies. Turn 2. Again, turn 2. Japanese just pushing forward on their left flank. They've got a squad out here. They've got their knee mortars, another squad pushing forward. I'm going to play these as line of sight blocking terrain. That's kind of going to represent more dense jungle. So just decided that partway through. What's happening on the other side? There's a squad pushing up the Kokoda track itself, and then we've got 2 sections pushing up here, and the knee mortar section. The knee mortars have managed to spot this gone to ground squad up here, and they've fired. They got 1 hit, but the Australians saved and were not pinned. So not a great deal of action yet. The Japanese attack is just building momentum. Turn 3, things are heating up. Japanese went first, managed to pin this section here. In the British turn, though, they failed to rally, but then they used their platoon commander order to successfully rally that off. And on the other side over here, again, this section up here got pinned by the Japanese, even though they were gone to ground. And then in their turn, they managed to rally that off, and they in turn pinned this Japanese squad up there, which also lost a stand. So the Japanese lost 2 stands that turn. Bit more firing and stuff, and we're moving on to turn 4. Right, the Japanese fired their Juki, fired their knee mortars, and fired this squad up at the British here, killed a team, and then the final squad, the Japanese only had 4 orders this turn. The final squad charged in and assaulted. Now, Japanese scored 4 hits, and the British scored 4 hits. So the Australians, the Aussies lose 2 teams, and the Japanese will lose 2 teams. There's no saves in close assaults, but it's a draw because they both inflicted the same amount of casualties. So the Japanese have to retreat, and there is a 1 stand left, and we'll see if it survives or not. And gets a 1 on its morale check, so no, the British don't survive, and the Japanese are down to 2 out of 5, but they remain on the table. Okay, so even though it was a draw in the last Aussie squad, Aussie team failed its morale check and was destroyed, the Japanese had to retreat. But they've cleared out 1 section of foxholes now and have potentially made an inroads. But as I said, they only got 4 orders, and they were all used assaulting over here. So what can the Australians do to come back? Okay, turn 4, Aussie's turn. Both these sections here open fire on this Japanese section. Japanese counters concealed because it is jungly. They managed to kill 1 team. Japanese passed the morale checks. Likewise, over here, 2 Australian sections on the plateau in front of the village opened fire on this squad here, there is only one team left. They killed 3 teams. The last team passed its morale check though and remained on table. So casualties inflicted by both sides on turn 4. Okay, turn 5. The Aussies have gone first. They've fired at this squad here. Did 1 casualty. Japanese returned fire. The Aussies saved everything. Then the Aussies here fired on the Juki medium machine gun. 3 failed saves and they killed it. And the knee mortars here returned fire up at this platoon. 5 hits but no casualties that were caused there. So a bit of carnage caused, and the Aussies are holding 3 orders to see what the Japanese do so that they can react. Okay, and in their turn, the Japanese have just tried to work around this flank a wee bit more. Fired at the Aussie section up there, no casualties. Aussies used a reaction to fire back, and again, no casualties. So that is it for turn 5. The Aussies are holding on. Okay, after pinning the Aussie section with the Juki and the knee mortars, this squad charged in to the pinned Aussie platoon. Japanese 3 hits, Aussies only got 1. So the Aussies lose a stand and they retreat. And we'll do a morale check for them. They fail. And the Japanese don't need a morale check actually because they won the assault. But the Aussies are broken there. So good assault by the Japanese. Okay, end of turn 6. Japanese have stormed those foxholes, routing an Aussie section. Over on the side, the Jukis and this infantry squad have pinned that Australian section there as well. That's where we're going to call it a day, with the Japanese just working their way around the flanks. Haven't captured the buildings in the village, but the Aussies are in danger of being outflanked now, so they are going to withdraw back to Daniki. Okay, so this shot here pretty much shows the Japanese have just taken those foxholes and were starting to make inroads around this flank. They were pretty much stalled over here by the other 2 squads from 11 platoon though, and there was another squad making its way through here. So that's where we will call it a day. Probably not too dissimilar to what happened in the actual encounter. And we'll have a look at that in a second at the historical outcome. But basically, the Japanese started infiltrating and outflanking the Australian position, so the Aussies were in danger of being cut off when they decided their position wasn't tenable and time to retreat. Okay, and what actually happened was the combat took place during the afternoon, and about 5 p.m. Captain Templeton went to check that the route back to Daniki was open. They'd got some reinforcements early in the afternoon from 16 platoon that had been flown into Kokoda and then just marched up the track to join them. I think that's what happened. And they're expecting the other half of the platoon to arrive, and Captain Templeton went to check to lead the troops in to support them. Not long after he disappeared down the track, there was a burst of machine gun fire. Templeton was never heard of again, and it wasn't until the early 2000s that what actually happened to him was finally cleared up. Turns out he was captured by the Japanese. He was interrogated by the commanding officer of the Japanese company. He said something to the Japanese commander that caused the commander to maybe lose face, I'm not sure. But anyway, the commander ran him through with his sword and killed Captain Templeton. He was a massive loss to the 39th. He was a bit of a major legend and well loved and respected by his troops. Before he died, however, he had been interrogated and he told the Japanese that there was a lot more troops defending the track than there actually was, and that there was something like 80,000 troops in Port Moresby as well. The Japanese believed him to a degree. I'm not sure whether they totally believed what they'd been told, but what it did mean was they became a lot more cautious in their preparations rather than just charging up the track. And this actually brought more time for the troops from the AIF to arrive, and they arrived just in time for one of the next major engagements. So a sad end to Captain Templeton, but he had a major influence on the outcome. And meantime, the Australians here at Oivi realised that they were being outflanked and were in danger of being cut off. So they retreated, and I think it was under a thunderstorm at night. So pretty treacherous conditions, but it meant it was easier for them to infiltrate their way past the Japanese. And they did so thanks to a Papuan Lance Corporal called Sinopa, who led the Australians to safety. And that happened time and time again. The Papuans played a pivotal role, really, in the battle, scouting, leading troops out of encirclements, and the porters, the so-called Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels, as they became known, 8 troops per casualty to lead them back down the track were required, and also massive numbers of porters to try and get supplies up the track as well. So can't underestimate the role that the Papuan people played in the battles on the track as well. But there we go. That's it for today. So thank you very much for watching. I enjoyed that. I'm getting each game I play, I'm noting down things that aren't working, or maybe I tweak them a wee bit, but I think overall I've got the rules in a place where I'm happy with them. But yeah, just each game there are a few changes and modifications being done. So these smaller scale battles are really good in that regard. But that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time, ka kite anō. Take care.